Hi, I'm James and thanks for tuning in to eBuyer. In this video, I'll be taking a look at a really unique graphics card from Asus Republic of Gamers. This is their Radeon RX 6900 XT, but rather than being air-cooled, it's actually water-cooled. That means you've got to install a radiator alongside the graphics card for, theoretically, some really accelerated performance and some much lower temperatures. Does it actually work though? Well, I guess that's what we're going to find out in today's video, where we'll not only be unboxing it, taking a look at the key features, but also installing it into a system, opening up some temperature monitoring software, and seeing what kind of results we're able to achieve. Let's do this. Unboxing this undoubtedly huge graphics card box, we're greeted with some ROG stickers and some nice protective foam, and then the GPU contraption itself. Now, what do I mean by contraption? Well, this comes pre-water cooled, much like an all-in-one liquid cooler that was pre-attached to the CPU. That is of course really useful because it makes it super user-friendly, but it does make the unboxing experience rather unique. So taking out the GPU itself, you'll then see we've got these tubes that come pre-connected and the radiators underneath. Before that though, let's actually take it out of the anti-static wrapping and look at the design of the card first of all. Rather interestingly, this actually has a blower style fan pre-installed as standard. So not only do you have the AIO to cool down the actual GPU chip and die itself, but you've also got a blower fan which exhausts air out the rear of the card to keep all of your other GPU components nice and cool. Taking out this protective foam layer then next up, and under here we should find, we do, our radiator. Not only do you get the radiator, but the fans are pre-installed too. Asus really have gone above and beyond here to make it as user-friendly as possible. This is like one of the most insane contraptions ever, so let's clear off the table and then we can properly take a look at what it's all about and try and make the thing look a little bit less confusing, because I appreciate for a first-time builder right now, this looks like a little bit of a minefield. I think that does help to make things a bit clearer. So you've got your standard GPU here, just forget about your water cooling for a moment. Standard graphics card with your display outputs at the rear, a PCIe slot on the bottom of the GPU here to plug up to your motherboard, and your backplate which just sits behind the GPU chip itself. Then of course you've got the tubes which carry liquid which is pre-filled through to the radiator to cool down the graphics card chip. What happens here is you have a transfer of heat. Heat from the GPU makes the liquid warmer, and the liquid then goes through to be cooled down through the radiator. There's a few key advantages to this. First, you get much more cooling capacity than you would with an air cooler. Second, you're actually moving the heat away from the graphics card to another part of your case, allowing you to manage heat and airflow and all that good stuff. You've got two large 120mm fans plus the blower fan, which will be much larger than you typically find on a graphics card. And of course, you could add fans on the other side for push-pull and even more airflow if you wanted to. Is it worth it though as far as performance goes? Well, we will be testing that later, but in theory, yes. And that's because the cooler the graphics card is, the better it will run, the more overclocking headroom you'll actually have, and the lifespan of the card should theoretically increase as well. A lot of the cables are pre-managed, including your fan speed, so the fan speed will be directly controlled by the temperature of the GPU. It's also hugely beneficial from a noise point of view. Because the heat is now away from the graphics card, we haven't got to worry about applying quite as much cooling, and because the fans are larger, 120 as opposed to 70, 80 or 90mm fans that you'd usually get on the card itself, it means they can actually spin slower and still provide the same air throughput, meaning cooling is much more efficient. I think the best way of actually demonstrating this though is to plug it up to a system and actually install the radiator so you can see what kind of layout you'd be able to achieve. Something you should note as well before going ahead and buying this, make sure you've got room for a 240mm GPU radiator, as some of you may already have CPU liquid coolers populating some slots. If you've got room for the radiator, you should be good to go, but I'll talk you through that in the next stage of today's video now. The first game we're going to use to test out the 6900 XT is GTA 5. Now, some of you might be confused. This is a bit of an older game. Although it's still popular, it's by no means AAA anymore. But it does allow you to push a GPU to its absolute limits. It has an inbuilt benchmarking mode for super repeatable results, and loads of settings you can go ahead and tweak to really fine-tune the performance of a card. So here's a quick look at the settings that we'll be using. Basically 4K maximum. We're going to hit the tab key and start the benchmark. Keep your eye on the frame rate, which will appear in the bottom center of the screen. As a general rule of thumb, 4K, 60 FPS, 70 FPS is going to be great, most monitors don't go past 60 Hz. The super expensive ones maybe up to 120, 140. If we can sit in the region of 80 or 90 FPS, that'll be great. If not, 60 will be adequate. So let's see whereabouts on that spectrum we sit. The frame rate will fluctuate a lot through the benchmark mode as well, dependent on the scene and the time of day, so we'll take a look at those differences too. Straight off the bat then, we're sitting over 100 frames a second. I will be honest, I wasn't quite expecting that from the 6900 XT. It's a super powerful card for straight rasterization, as we discussed, and clearly the water cooling solution is allowing it to be pushed that bit further. 140 FPS now, so the frame rate's actually gone up considerably. And one thing that strikes me about this system is actually how quiet it could become with our radiators. It's a much quieter way of dissipating heat than having 2 fans on top of the CPU and 3 fans on the GPU. As the benchmark mode continues and you keep an eye on that frame rate number, one big advantage of this design is actually that the GPU is quite thin. It fits inside perfectly a 2-slot form factor, rather than overspilling. Perfect if you've got multiple GPUs and you want to mount them in a case together. It means you can move the radiator away from the GPU, move the cooling solution away from those PCIe lanes, and free up a little bit more space. It also gives more room for the blower fan, which is actually recessed slightly to make sure that even with cards stacked together, you still have plenty of airflow. Very clever Asus. Rounding off the benchmark then, we're still over 100 FPS. I was expecting good results, but that's fantastic. 120, 130. The GTA benchmark doesn't tend to go that much higher than that. So great results from our 6900 XT water-cooled edition. The next title we're going to try out is a little bit of Splitgate. This is a game we've tried recently here on the eBuyer channel that's increasing in popularity at a rate of knots. Once again, we will have the frame rate counter in the corner. We're running at 4K, pretty much maximum or epic settings in our case today, to really push the 6900 XT to the absolute maximum. So keep an eye on that frame rate counter and let's see what numbers we're able to clock in with this range-topping AMD graphics card. Yes, first kill on the board. Oh no! The first kill we managed to get, we then got instantly killed by the teammate, but that's okay. We're going to respawn and we're sitting at nearly 300 FPS. So as far as actual visual performance goes, I don't think there's any concerns whatsoever. No. Escape. I don't think there's any concerns whatsoever as far as performance goes, at least not on that front. There we go, there's the second kill. That was a little bit of a sneaky one, I'm not going to lie, but we'll take it nevertheless. We will indeed take it. Lovely stuff. And there's kill number 3. That's pretty nicely done. No, escape. There we go. Nice. This is pivotal moment of the game. I could do with this last kill on the board. No, not quite. But the performance is still holding up. We're still at that 300 frames per second, give or take mark, on our 6900 XT, which I think is enough for me to move on to the final game today in confidence that those first-person shooters like Splitgate, Valorant, Apex are all nicely accounted for. Finally then, the last thing we're going to run on the 6900 XT is a bit of Apex Legends. We're running at 4K with VSync disabled and everything else set to insane maximum. Basically everything that can be very high or ultra is set to this setting in our menu. We're going to jump into an arena game. Keep your eye on the frame rate in the top right corner. It is a little bit on the small side, so I'll read it out as we go along. And it also gives us information about GPU, CPU temperatures, VRAM usage, and our GPU utilization. So we are jumping in. The first round has begun. We're at around about 132 frames per second. I'll take that. 144 now as well. Apex tends to be capped around the 140 mark. So if we don't get any higher than that, that is why. But still, 140 is going to be pretty good for us today. Yes, there we go. First knockdown of the game. Oh, there's another one. Where's the other one? Oh, syringe. Oh, this is really not good now. Here we go. This is very tense. We are syringe. We are back up. Just got to find the other player. There he is. I see him. Oh, there's 2 of them. Crumbs. We have been absolutely Roshan rumbled here, ladies and gentlemen. He's been knocked down. Can we get him? Oh, goodness gracious me. This is really tight. Oh, and the thing's coming in. I see it. Oh, no! Nearly. The frame rate, though, 140 frames a second. We got a nice kill in there. Nearly 2, actually. Sadly, one of our teammates let us down, but the frame rate didn't. The 6900 XT performed really well. And that's our game of Apex Legends. And on that note, that pretty much wraps it up for our first look, unboxing, installation and review of the water-cooled Asus ROG 6900 XT. If this is a card you'd like to pick up, check the links down in the description below. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll see you again soon.